In District 3, the Democrat tickets, Robert Kerr leading there with 54% of the mainly absentee ballots that have been turned in. On the Democratic ticket, Robinson in the lead there, followed by Polling. And on the Republican ticket, Miller, and then we see Hudkins far behind. Those, of course, very, very early returns.
Of course, the most contested race is for governor, and the returns so far for the Democrats, at least. You can see there Steve Lewis with 31%, Wes Watkins also 31%, David Walters with 30%. Among the Democrats, Barnett at 5% and Langston at 3%. For the Republicans, Vince Orza is still leading at this point with 30%, Price with 26%, and Burns Hargis with 25%. Still just about 1% of the precincts reporting.
It won't be too long, Steve, before the votes will be coming in very fast as far as the results that we're getting this evening. Now, Congressman Wes Watkins is putting a lot on the line in his bid for the governor's mansion.
No matter what happens tonight, Watkins loses his job in Congress. Our Scott Gordon joins us now live via News Star 8 from Watkins' watch party in Oklahoma City.
Steve, indeed, a lot on the line as these returns come in. The mood here is starting to pick up a little bit. The band has started to play, although they're taking a break right now. Now all the people behind me are keeping their eyes on a big screen TV in front of me as watching as the latest returns come in. All indications are for a very close race. One Watkins aide told me a short time ago, only half joking, that they're all in for heart attacks before the night is out. Wes Watkins himself is in Ada. He'll then go on to Tulsa, put in an appearance there. Then he'll arrive here about 10 o'clock this evening for what he hoped will be a victory speech. But it is still early, and as we know from past elections, things can change very quickly. We'll be here, keep tabs on it throughout the evening, and report it back to you as it happens. Steve, Carol.
Thank you. Scott Gordon reporting live from Oklahoma City. Now, the gubernatorial candidate of the Republican establishment is Burns Hargis.
News 8's Clark Powell is with the candidate now, watching the numbers as they come in. Clark?
Steve and Carol, it is a tight race as the numbers show, obviously. We are at the Burns Hargis watch party here at the Westin Hotel in Tulsa. Joining us now live is the candidate himself, Mr. Burns Hargis. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Hargis, first of all, when this all started out, Bill Price was considered much of a front runner, but as of late, you have come on strong. To what do you attribute that success?
Well, I think some of it is the message, Clark, but to be honest, the relative anonymity of the voters has had its impact on this race. We just aren't that well known, and we've had to build name ID, and it's been an incredibly expensive thing for me to do that, but we've finally done it. The other candidates really had a lot more name ID starting out, and I think we've pulled even with them.
A couple of weeks ago, there was a poll that showed about 50% of the Republican voters not quite sure who they would vote for. How has that changed your strategy in campaigning in northeastern Oklahoma?
Well, we did a direct mail piece, and I think we're the only ones that did. We had a piece that went out to almost 75,000 voters, and I think it hit Saturday and Monday, and I think it's made a big impact.
How important do you consider Tulsa in this election for the governor's seat?
Well, it's essential. I mean, a Republican doesn't get elected governor of Oklahoma without Tulsa, and I think that you've got to demonstrate strength here to have any, in the primary as well, to have any chance in the general.
You knew this was going to happen. We're going to ask you to look a little bit into the future, into the crystal ball. If there is a runoff, who would you prefer, and will there be any change in strategy depending on who you run against?
Well, the predictable answer is I don't care. I just want in the runoff. We'll adjust our strategy to whoever that is, and I think with the volunteers and the organization that we have, we'll be a match for anybody.
Now, how about in the long term with the race in the general election between Republicans and Democrats? What will the strategy be between the two parties, or is there that much of a difference?
Yeah, I think there is a very fundamental difference, and I think the Republican Party wants to create a very pro-business climate for Oklahoma to build and grow. I think that we're going to emphasize small business. We know most new jobs come from existing small business, and that's what we in the Republican Party are going to emphasize. And I think the Democratic Party too often, or their leaders, have looked to government to solve these problems. We want to look to the private sector.
Mr. Hargis, thank you and good luck tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Clark.
We'll keep an eye on the situation here from the Hargis campaign, as you will there, and we'll pass along any information we have to you.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you, Burns Hargis. Of course, the big question in the race for governor is the undecided vote, how those people will decide. And in fact, the way the undecideds vote will be determining in who makes it into the runoff.
Exactly. We will be back in about a half an hour. We want to point out that during these mid-evening cut-ins, we will be giving the latest results for some of the key races, and then coming up on News 8 at 10, we will have the latest results from some 130 races in northeastern Oklahoma. So stay tuned to News 8 throughout the evening for your latest and fastest election results.
See you in about half an hour.
This has been a News 8 election update. for our people is a huge issue in this race.
Do you really feel like a statewide lottery would be that big of an impact on education funding in the future?
It's not a huge impact from a percentage standpoint of the total higher education budget, but I think it could be very successfully used to provide those extra things, capital improvements, scholarships, tuition aid grants, and that sort of thing that can give us a little bit of a leg up. After all, Colorado, Missouri, Kansas, other states take advantage of this non-tax source, and it's a way to help higher education and VOTAC without raising taxes.
Candidate Steve Lewis, thank you very much and the best of luck.
Thank you.
Now back to you.
Barrett Van Landingham reporting from the Lewis headquarters tonight.
It's interesting as the results come in. We're going to take a look at some more numbers now. As soon as our folks upstairs put some numbers on the screen, we'll go to them. We'll start off with the county commission in Tulsa County, District 1. On the Democratic ticket, Lewis Harris in the lead there with 54%. There's 94% of the precincts in at this hour. On the Republican ticket, Cornegay is in the lead there with almost a 2-to-1 lead over Rudd.
In District 3, you can see the numbers there. About 55% of the precincts reporting at this point. Ramsey with 61%, Neal at 27%, and Mislanka with 11%. On the Republican side, Bob Dick with 54%, Hood at 15%. Also continuing there, District 3 with the Republicans, Pendergrass at 10%, and Lewis with 5%. Once again, just about 51% of the precincts reporting.
And of course, on the district attorney's race for Tulsa County, David Moss, the incumbent, is in the lead there, a strong lead with 81% of the 25% of the precincts reported, followed by Miller with 18% of the vote in so far.
The race that most people are watching tonight, though, is the race for the governor's nomination. Businessman Vince Orza was a dark horse when the campaigning began several months ago, but he got his message across to many Oklahoma voters.
News 8's Yvonne Harris joins us now from Vince Orza's Tulsa Watch Party at 58th and Memorial. What's
Steve and Carol, I don't know if you can hear me, but I am having trouble hearing you. Vince Orza right now is en route to Oklahoma City. He was here earlier today for a watch party. I'm at his Tulsa watch party where about 50 or so of his supporters are awaiting the outcome of tonight's primary election returns. There's occasional outbursts of applause as the television comes on and the precincts are reporting their information. And they are showing right now Vince Orza ahead. I spoke with Orza before he left, and he says he was campaigning all day today, hoping to make a difference. He spent a lot less money in this campaign than other campaigns, than other candidates, I should say. He says that's because he didn't have to spend all of that money, and that also that he wants to show Oklahomans that he can make a difference in the governor's office and can run the governor's office efficiently. Orza left Oklahoma City about 30 minutes ago, where he's headed for a watch party there. His supporters here are excited, and you hear them. They're very excited. I think the last precincts we saw, Vince Orza was ahead by like 8,000 votes to the other Republican leader, and they are very excited here and waiting the outcome of tonight's results. Carol and Steve.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yvonne Harris reporting from Vince Orza's campaign headquarters in Tulsa tonight.
And right now we're going to check in with News 8's Charles Ely, who is at the watch party for Bill Price in Oklahoma City. We're not going to check in with Charles right now, but we are going to show you the latest numbers on the gubernatorial race. Let's go to the screen, please. On the Democratic ticket, Steve Lewis in the lead, tied with David Walters, 33% each at 5% of the precincts reporting, followed by Wes Watkins with 26%, 4,471 votes. Then Barnett with 5% and Ann Langston at 3%. So there is a long way to go on that.
And again, among the Republicans, Orza at 36%. That, I think, is the real surprise tonight. Price at 26% and Burns-Hargis with 19%, followed by Brown at 17% and Hoyt at 2%.
And Charles Ely is now, I promise you, joining us live from Oklahoma City at the Bill Price Watch Party.
Give me the number.
How about it, Charles?
445.
I said I promise. I think he's there. Charles, can you hear us?
Well, while we're waiting, it's interesting in the race on the Republican side that the candidate who came from a long ways behind and really surprised everybody tonight and in the polls leading up to today was Vince Orza. And he has been very astute, I think, in the way he's run his campaign, in that he said that really it's not a campaign, it's marketing. And Orza has a lot of experience in marketing with his experience with the restaurant chain around the state.
And also has a doctorate in economics, so I'm sure all that has played a big part in his strategy of making money go in campaigning, at least a long distance too. Now we do go to Charles Ely at Bill Price's watch party. Good evening, Charles.
Good evening, Stephen, Carol. It's good to be with you finally. The folks here at the Price Watch Party, if you ask them how they're doing, they say they're doing okay. Not great, not fantastic, just okay. On the other hand, they are predicting they will be in the runoff with Vince Orza no matter what happens tonight. They say that because their own polls, while those polls show that Orza was ahead, that he wasn't that far ahead. The margin wasn't as great as it was in the public polls. They say their research shows that Orza's supporters are name recognition supporters, people who know him from commercials from his restaurants, but not necessarily people who will go out and vote. So they're thinking that their supporters are more likely to actually go to the ballot box and pull the lever, and that's what they're counting on. They believe that they've done a good job the last couple days, knowing they were behind, getting to the phone banks and hammering those phones and motivating people to get out and get to the ballot box to actually do something. Because as they've said, unless people vote, it doesn't matter who they like. Now, basically, as it stands right now, obviously Orza has a good, solid lead, but they say they expected that. In this particular case, they say Oklahoma City, Tulsa, they were not expecting big things in each of those communities, especially because of things like House Bill 1017. However, they are expecting big things when some of the smaller communities come in. The smaller towns and even places like southwestern Oklahoma, they're expecting a big surprise from the ballot box in southwestern Oklahoma. They say they were basically conceding to Orza in a lot of the areas, but their strength is yet to show up. And as the night continues, they are expecting Orza's margin to shrink a little bit with each additional ballot box that comes in, and that they will step away from Hargis and get very close to Orza in terms of that runoff. And basically they say the only thing that matters tonight is third place. The first two folks are going to be just fine. They get to start from scratch, and they just don't want to be third. In terms of all that's going on, you can see that there's a pretty good party going on here at this point, but it's not quite as happy as it was earlier in the evening before the numbers started coming in. So, Stephen, Carol, we'll go back to you. We'll be following the action here as it goes on, and Price should be here later in the evening.
Thank you, Charles. I think it's going to be a long night in the gubernatorial race, don't you, Steve?
Yes, I do.
It will indeed. Let's get an update now on the numbers on the race for the seats in the U.S. House that are up for grabs in the nomination process tonight. In District 1, among the Democrats, Kurt Glasgow, a man that ran 2 years ago with 63% of the vote so far. Emily Warner trailing him at 20%. Trailing behind them, Guthrie at 10% and Jackman with a bit less than that. In District 2, among the Democrats, Mike Steiner again with a commanding lead over Jack Ross, 65% to 35%. And among the Republicans, Gorham in the lead with 64%, followed by Ferrier and Vardaman.
And in District 3 on the Democratic ticket, it's Brewster in the lead with 49% of the vote in, the 2% precincts reporting. And then Robinson on the Democratic, followed by Robinson, and then polling on the Republican ticket, we see in the lead there, Miller trailing is Hudkins with 48%. Very close between those two contenders.
There you have it, the numbers to this point. There's more to come, though. Stay with us tonight for our coverage of Election 90.
See you then.
This has been a News 8 election update.